Hello everyone. Thank you for coming here. I'll try to keep it short so that I don't eat too much of your lunch. So my name is Tristan, and I work on the methods for the testing of the exhausted brain theory for visually induced motion sickness. So first off, I'll do a small introduction of what is visually induced motion sickness for those who are not aware of what it is. Then I wanted to talk about the currently well-known theories, but I think I'll skip this part so to just stay on time. So if you have any questions on it, I'll get them later. Then I'll talk a bit more about what is the exhausted brain theory that is in the title. Then I'll talk about my current and future works, and I'll conclude on the subjects. So first off, what is visually induced motion sickness, or VIMS for short? This is an issue that appeared with the arrival of immersive technologies, and even before that with simple videos on the screen. For example, it is a complex subject that has been studied and since the issue started to manifest, but to this day we did not manage to find a definite answer to the origin, to the source, to the root of this problem, even though many theories have been established to try to understand, measure, and mitigate this problem. One of the issues encountered during research is that every individual is different, and so is their sensitivity to this. While some people have tried to determine common factors to sensibility, like gender, age, to side of view, there is no definite answer, as multiple results can be obtained from the same type of experiment. Also, as sickness is felt differently between individuals, it is complicated to measure its intensity reliably, even using electroencephalograms, electrographograms, sedation measures, or heart rate, for example. We have to rely mostly on subjective feedback through questionnaires such as the Simulator Sickness Questionnaire SSQ or its variants, or the Fast Motion Sickness Score FMS, or the Misery Scale MISC. The symptoms of VIMS, you probably have, some of you felt them, are also really inconsistent and can vary from one person to the other. But they include mostly oculomotor disturbances, nausea, sleepiness, disorientation, visual flashbacks, and in extreme cases, vomiting. An estimate of sensibility here is very large, but it is considered to be around 60% of people being sensible to at least one kind of side effect of this. So I'll skip this part for now. So the exhausted brain theory, or EBT for short, is a recent framework that aims to explain why the body reacts to conflicting sensory signals by producing symptoms described as motion sickness. So the theory was introduced by one of my co-directors of thesis, Diego Montero, and Haining Liang in 2025 from the perspective of computational neuroscience. It is an energy-based framework that builds on the idea that the brain continuously utilizes metabolic resources to adapt its internal model through synaptic adjustments in order to reach and maintain a low-strain resting state. For something more visual, it presents itself more simply in this diagram. So when entering VR, represented by the unnatural event here, this event forces our brain to adapt to this new environment, and if the adaptation is successful, the brain gets to a new normal or a low-strain rest state. If it's not adapted correctly or over-adapted, it enters an exhausted state, and in this state it still continues to receive external signals like visual, auditive, proprioceptive, and vestibular feedback. And the brain continues to consume metabolic resources involuntarily, which might explain the progressive arrival of symptoms as the state of the individual worsens. So this framework takes into account a broader range of factors than most theories and offer a complementary explanation to the already present hypotheses without going against them. DBT also integrates metabolic constraints and existing sensory and postural accounts. It is not a framework that goes against other theories, but made to complement and explain them for the most uncertain ones. It is also distinguishable from other theories and frameworks, as there might be multiple origins to the same consequences of VIM symptoms. For the current and future works, my thesis subject is centered around testing the theory I just presented. And so in this scope, we have three main focuses. First off, studying the effects of mental workload and mental fatigue on sensitivity to VIMs, with the goal of establishing a relationship between mental states and sensibility to VIMs. We also would like to observe and measure the effect of vestibular feedback on the mental workload. And finally, we would like to try to induce sickness without using vection or in a more general way, as little as possible of vestibular feedback as possible. So mainly using conflict between visual and proprioceptive feedback. So until now, I have mostly worked and played with using incongruent proprioception to try and observe an increase in workload in different scenarios. As this is still an ongoing experiment, I will not be able to disclose more information, unfortunately, on the procedure or the result at the moment, but maybe at a later time. In the near future, I plan also to use galvanic vestibular stimulation, or GVS, which you can try on the booth M43 of NBI, to try and observe a correlation between mental strain, postural instability, and VIMS. And as a final research focus, I will try, as said earlier, to use conflicts to induce sickness without using the vestibular feedback, as it is the most mentioned source of VIMs throughout the different theories exposed, well, that I have not exposed previously. To conclude, the EBT is grounded in a substantial body of existing literature on sensory conflict, adaptation, mental workload, and fatigue, and is formulated in a way that allows for empirical testing. Rather than replacing established theories, the EBT provides a framework for examining their logical consequences under explicit resource constraints. At present, the theory is still at an early stage of validation, and dedicated experiments targeting cognitive and metabolic load are still ongoing. Current work focuses on assessing whether the predicted relationships between adaptation demands, sustained neural effort, and VIM symptoms can be observed in a controlled setting. As most theories rely on vestibular feedback as a factor of VIMs, and to verify our theory as much as possible, we will try to induce sickness without the solicitation of the vestibular feedback. And by making these assumptions explicit and testable, DBT aims to support systematic investigation and comparison with existing models, with the broader goal of improving our understandings of VIMs through cumulative and falsifiable evidence. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Tristan. Any question? One question. No? I have a question. How do your theories fit in with the others?
Oh, okay. So for this, I will have to go back to the part I couldn't explain earlier, so to have such examples. So I will use the conflicting cues theory as a main example, as it is the most well-known theory to this day and the most common. So first off, the conflicting cue theory is a term originally used before for optical illusions, so with the arrows here, for example. But we use in the scope of VIMS to refer to conflicts between visual and vestibular feedback. So conflict between what you see and what the internal ear feels in terms of balance and movements. So when there is a conflict, in this case, the brain will try to reconnect and rewire your brain to adapt to this conflict, to try to either correct the conflict or live with it. And so in this case, it will use more metabolic resources it could at least use more metabolic resources to adapt and to correct this conflict. And so that would be one possible explanation of the operation of VIMS in this case.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Tristan.
There's a question.
Thank you for your presentation. Good question. In your protocols, if you want to induce cyber sickness, what would be the ethics committee validation about that?
So for now, I'm trying on increasing the VIMS, but for the most part, if we wanted to reduce VIMS in the scope of this thesis, it would be to reduce the cognitive load as much as possible by putting the users in an environment they can relate to and that requires the least adaptation possible. So having natural movements, having faithful graphics, and such.
Thank you, Tristan. We are going to explain you what is going to happen now, and then the afternoon program.